it's quite a groundbreaking technology because what it allows to do is it brings direct debit to Bitcoin. And it does so including in a self-custodial environment.
And for most Westerners, I think today's need is how do I protect myself from inflation? How do I store the value of my time and labor? And obviously Bitcoin serves that now.
I mean, there's so many Bitcoin companies whose only target customer are Bitcoiners, yet they charge them only in dollars because there's no solution for subscriptions in Bitcoin, right?
There are a lot of headaches that business owners have with banks and with legacy fiat that they're just probably just kind of accustomed to. And if you propose something that can just eliminate that friction, that's a huge value add to them.
I just show them, see, this is Nostr, some decentralized stuff, doesn't matter, but it looks like Twitter. But I've got this extra button and it allows me to make instant microtransactions that no one can stop, no one can censor, and this person received the payment instantly.
Hey there, Michael here with the Bitcoin Way podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today on the show, I have Pierre Corbin, who is co-founder and CEO of Flash. Flash is an awesome company. It is a means of accepting Bitcoin as payment for your business. And they have all sorts of cool features, subscriptions, many other things we talk about. We dive into the importance of medium of exchange in Bitcoin and a whole host of other fun topics. And I think you're going to absolutely love this conversation. I know I sure did. Hey everyone, like I said in the intro, I've got Pierre here with me. Pierre, welcome to the Bitcoin Way podcast.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Like I told you offline, we're going to talk a lot about Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, and that is a hot topic at the Bitcoin Way because we believe people should be spending Bitcoin. I'll just say it up front. But there's sort of a hot take that stirred up a lot of comments and I wouldn't say controversy, but just different takes on this. The million sat question. Jeff Booth says that Bitcoin, and by the way, I'm a big Jeff Booth fan, but he says that if Bitcoin fails as a medium of exchange, it fails as a store of value as well. And I would love to hear, as someone building in the medium of exchange use case, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so and I really love Jeff Booth as well. I think he's just such an inspiring person, always so kind, so much knowledge. 100% agree with you there, and yeah, I think Jeff Booth's comment is quite deep and philosophical. Essentially, I think in contrast to what Michael Saylor is saying, I think that's the best contrast we can do, right? Because Michael Saylor is the person that is really pushing this idea that. That Bitcoin is only good as store of value, and I think it's just it's a matter of time frame essentially. I think that I understand why Michael Saylor would be saying this now, and especially I'm pretty sure that Michael Saylor understands Bitcoin very well, likely better than me even, right? So I think it's really the idea that today the easiest use case, especially in the West, is to think about Bitcoin as a store of value. The moment everyone has Bitcoin for its store of value purposes, well then, I mean, you're going to want to spend your Bitcoin. And I think this then can come as a second step. That's what, I hope is in the sight of Michael Saylor's mind. Because the truth is that, as Jeff Booth says, and I think it's true, if in the end no one is using it, well then I think there's a moment where people will also just stop selling it and buying it. I think, it's not just this self-fulfilling prophecy. I think we've seen the price of Bitcoin increase through the years, but we've also seen the usage of Bitcoin increase. And I don't think one can grow without the other, essentially. And I think they both grow together. Yeah, but in the short term, it might be one over the other. There might be more usage or more store of value use case. That's I think where variations can come in. But I tend to agree with Jeff Booth though that if we don't use if Bitcoin isn't used as a means of exchange, well then actually Bitcoin won't have reached its full potential, and that's where people might start doubting it then. Because I mean, if you think about the Bitcoin white paper, it doesn't say Bitcoin store of value. It says Bitcoin peer-to-peer electronic cash system, right? And so I think That's the original idea that came with Bitcoin, and I think its properties make it perfect money, including for exchange. And so I believe that people will anyway be naturally drawn to using it as a means of exchange, not only as a store of value. But I guess we'll see kind of
Yeah.
what happens, right?
Yeah, I'll kind of give you my thought, and then you're free to comment on it. So am directionally with Jeff Booth. I think I probably actually agree with you, kind of down the middle with a lean toward Jeff Booth more broadly, and that's because like the example I always use is Bitcoiners talk about like ending the forever wars with a finite, scarce, decentralized money, right? If if governments aren't paying for fighter jets and military equipment with Bitcoin and the money printer still operates, we don't see that like end result that people have historically in Bitcoin talked about. I think maybe where I disagree with Jeff a little bit is I don't think it necessarily it fails to reach its whole potential, as you says. It doesn't necessarily fail as a store of value. For example, very few people are using gold as a medium of exchange right now, right? But it's continued to operate as a store of value pretty well, and it's reaching all-time highs. Governments do hold, gold on their balance sheets, and so I could see, and this is a fear of mine, not like a hope. I could see Bitcoin still continuing to operate as a store of value for individuals, for governments, whoever, even if commerce isn't being transacted in that, because we have a historical parallel with something like gold. I'd be curious if maybe that's a way that you might think about framing it.
Yeah, well, so I think that's where it's nuanced, and but I believe that Jeff Booth's statement was an absolute statement. If it fails as a means of exchange, then it fails as a store of value. And whereas what you're saying, there's still the small usage between governments, kind of thing, or so because there is even though gold is used much more as a store of value than as a means of exchange, it is still used. So it's not absolutely not used, right? So I think that's where the nuance like comes in. But yeah, taking his words directly, I think it's and this is where it's the philosophical kind of perspective of it, where if no one uses it, well then no one will want it as a store of value, and I think that's where there's the high chances that he's right. I don't know. It's hard to say, to be honest, because of course we don't know how this would play out. But yeah, I think gold is anyway a good example of where this would go anyway. I doubt people would completely stop using Bitcoin as a means of exchange because already today everyone complains how little Bitcoin is used as a means of exchange, yet it is still used, including for big transactions. So this world of maybe small volume but high transactions, I think that's a that yeah, I think this is a potentially real scenario. Now, at the same time, though, I have to say that, like as you said, Bitcoiners always talk about um, how we're gonna end the Fed, we're gonna like stop the wars because sound money and all of this stuff. And I mean, of course, I agree with this with these ideas, generally speaking, or at least with the hope that comes with these ideas. But like the way I talk about Bitcoin now has really shifted a lot. I don't really talk about when I'm trying to talk with someone that doesn't know about Bitcoin, trying to explain Bitcoin like high level. Now, what I really try and what I feel works and convinces people more, rather than go into a full origins of money and Austrian economics, like the kind of stuff that it's going to be hard to convince them about. They're like, we have to go deep into a 4-hour conversation. Uh, to be honest, I think what works much better is explaining Bitcoin from the means of exchange perspective, because you can very easily give just a few use cases and instantly blow their mind, right? I can show them how I can pay someone in Latin America from Europe, and the payment is received instantly. And we can work with people abroad. We hire people from Africa that with the traditional fiat system, we wouldn't be able to hire them ever, right? But we can pay them in Bitcoin, therefore we can hire these people, right? That's the kind of use cases that speak a lot. And even, another one that I like, that's already as part of a conversation. But very often, what I'll do, the first thing I do is I'll take my phone. I'll take because making a transaction, like I got to send it to someone, like you got to show it, and if that person doesn't know anything, I'm not going to get them to download a Bitcoin wallet. They're never going to use it. They're going to lose that Bitcoin. Instead, what I do very easily is I take out my phone, I take my favorite Nostr client, which usually is Primal, and I just show them, you see, this is Nostr, some decentralized stuff, doesn't matter. But it looks like Twitter. But I've got this extra button and it allows me to like make instant microtransactions that no one can stop, no one can censor. And this person received the payment instantly. And if that's not the future of money and of making payments, I don't know what is. Like it's just a better payment network. And so you see, and this like instantly clicks there. Oh, really? Oh, wow. Like it's with this kind of thing that I got my mom to like stack sats just by playing games and like, it's because this works. It's easy to understand. And the only thing that matters is to make them understand, its value. Its value. It just so happens that the tech in order to like send this value over is Bitcoin. That's it. And this like it really resonates with people. And I find it easier to convince day-to-day people with the means of exchange use case as opposed to the store of value use case. But with conversations with people, going up the ladder of um, cantillionaires, well, the store of value conversation is easier for them to understand. So it's kind of interesting, how different people based on like where they are on the ladder of cantillionaires resonate with Bitcoin. Yeah, so you got to pick what story for what audience. I think that's anyway the general advice, right?
Yeah, no, that's interesting because in my mind, like the first example you gave, I think resonates a lot. Like in the West, like I remember seeing a tweet a couple years ago, and it was someone talking about Bitcoin's worthless. Like, why would you ever use this? I have Venmo, and someone in like somewhere in Iran, Pakistan, somewhere in the Middle East, responded, and they were like, I can't use Venmo here, but I can send value globally, without any intermediaries, without permission. Like this is like, do you understand the use case now? And so I think the first example you gave of like, hey, we want to hire someone in Africa, we can send them value immediately, no intermediaries. People who are in those scenarios or have experienced that sort of headache of trying to operate through the legacy financial system for global transactions, I could see it clicking very quickly, and like forget all the other properties of it. But if you can just accept for a moment that this is money and look what I can do with it, I can send that value rather quickly. I'm a little bit less sold candidly on the, like the sort of the second use case, and it's because of that tweet. I think if I went to my, any of my friends' house, look, I just got my raw milk farmer to start accepting Bitcoin. She's not orange pilled. She's just like, hey, I trust you that this is worthwhile, and it's really no skin off my back to sell a couple gallons of raw milk and accept Bitcoin. But if I try to explain to my friend who's not a Bitcoiner, doesn't really care, not paying attention, see, like I'm able to buy raw milk with Bitcoin, and there were no banks involved, right? And he'd be like, yeah, okay, cool, but like you could have just sent her Venmo too, and as far as she's concerned, she got the money or whatever. And so I think it's sort of like a place of, I hate this word because I think the woke left kind of brought it about, but like the financial privilege and all that sort of stuff. Like we really are in many cases we're privileged that I can buy my raw milk with on Venmo if I want to. And as far as we're concerned, there are no banks involved, even though there obviously are multiple in clearinghouses and all of that. So I think
Mhm.
the medium of exchange use case is a bit harder to explain, at least in my view. And you have more experience, so maybe I'm just wrong, but a little bit harder to explain, like just how incredibly significant and monumental the fact that there are no intermediaries and there's no one to get in the way, no one to censor you. Like that is a big deal, but I just think it's over people's heads in many cases,
Yeah.
typically in the West. Does
Yeah.
that is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. I think 100%. So at Flash we do payment solutions for businesses, yeah, that want to accept payments in Bitcoin. And since we're fully non-custodial, we never touch anyone's money. Well, it means we can be everywhere. And the top markets that we have are Nigeria and the US. And so, we try to talk with people on both sides to kind of understand where our product fits better and all of this. So I end up pitching, both sides of the ocean there. And um, when I talk to Westerners, like US or even Europe, right? Because it's the same kind of financial privilege as you mentioned it. Well, th- yeah, they don't really care. Like they're just thinking of, okay, I'm hoping I can, maybe reach an extra 1% of people that are already part of this economy. I don't really care for Bitcoin. It's just, if I can be put on some BTC map or something like that, more tourists will find me. Well, then, great. They don't hope on converting some of their customers to paying in Bitcoin. They just hope to reach an extra 1% of customers, right, and increase their revenue this way, which makes sense, right? Um, but then, so we have to be able to like give them solutions for this in particular. But then we also have to be able to explain to them that if you earn in Bitcoin and you keep it in Bitcoin, well then um, you can benefit from the store of value side of things, right? And
Yeah.
and that and so whereas when we talk to people from Africa, it's less important. Like they're just looking for payment solutions that allow them to be more easily interoperable with their neighbors, including like Nigeria is very. It's a country that is very separate, yeah, separate from the rest of Africa. Difficult to travel even to the neighboring countries. Same thing when it comes to payments, and so Bitcoin can be a pretty good solution when it comes to that, right? And so that's kind of what they're trying to solve, as opposed to Westerners that yeah, it's just kind of out of curiosity, and maybe the price of Bitcoin goes up, so it's something that's worth checking out and maybe being a part of. So it's two different stories. I agree, and it's a tough one to like, yeah, actually sell in a certain sense, because for someone that doesn't know anything about Bitcoin, we facilitate peer to peer payments between merchant and consumer. So we're not involved in the transaction, and it means that there's no intermediary, there's no chargebacks, there's no like the stuff that comes because there's intermediaries in the flow of payments in the traditional payment world, and that's awesome. I mean, I think it's awesome. Every Bitcoiner thinks it's awesome because that's like literally the point of Bitcoin, and we just managed to like make this true in a business to consumer environment. Um, but a lot of businesses that don't really think in terms of custody, rather don't think of custody at all, right? Because most people don't. You're just so used to someone holding custody of your funds that it's not even a topic, well then it's harder to get them to understand that part of it, which is why relying on the store of value side of things is pretty good. So we even created a calculator. You can check it out at like if you type calculator.paywithflash.com. You can choose, what's your product, what's your time frame, and it'll just show you, kind of the opposites of what Bitcoiners like to do with the price of inflation, like inflation that like made you lose money over time. Well, we kind of inverse this concept, saying, had I sold my, I don't know, the sweater that I saw in my store in Bitcoin 2 years ago, well, then it would be worth this much today, right? So for them, we try to rely more on the store of value side of things as well, just letting them know, you can accept Bitcoin super easy. You can get started for free in 2 minutes. Well, maybe what you want to do then is keep it in Bitcoin because you can benefit from that out of anyway, this extra 1% revenue that you're anyway thinking about. You're not thinking of converting your customers to Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm hoping for with getting my raw milk farmer on board to accept Bitcoin is that I'm gonna track all of my transactions with her for a couple of years and then go back to her and say, "Hey, just so you know, I've spent X $100 on raw milk over the last 4 years, and the value of what I've paid you is worth 3 times that," or whatever. So maybe like the store of value but like as someone who, I mean, she's not strictly running a business. I don't know if they're incorporated or not because I think she's just a person who is just kind of doing this as a service to the community. But you make an interesting point that there are a lot of headaches that business owners have with banks and with legacy fiat that like they're just probably just kind of accustomed to. And if you propose something that can just eliminate that friction, like that's a huge value add to them. Um, yeah, it's an interesting take, and so I guess maybe the people who are going to, because I've always looked at like the adoption as it's always made sense to me. It's a collectible. It's a bunch of cypherpunks playing around with this thing, and then it's a store of value. It's a scarce digital asset, and then it kind of it overlaps, but it begins to migrate into medium of exchange. But there are people globally who are I have to remember exist and are probably
mm,
billions of people who need what you're talking about, this medium of exchange use case now. They can't afford a hardware wallet and, or potentially can't afford a hardware wallet, but like they need the ability to send remittances. They need the ability to transact locally without censorship. It's stuff that I don't have to deal with today. I'm much more cautious of, the Canadian trucker protests and, free speech lockdowns in the UK and all that stuff than the average American is. And so I do worry about that as a potential need for Bitcoin, but most people don't. So
uh-huh,
it's yeah, it's interesting, like sort of taking a backwards approach. But I think you're right. Different people are going to have to come to it in different ways based on today's need. And for most Westerners, I think today's need is how do I protect myself from inflation? How do I store the value of my time and labor?
yeah,
And obviously Bitcoin serves that now.
mm,
I don't want
and
to. Yeah, yeah. Go on.
yeah, if I can just give, and because I was mentioning this example just this morning to a group of Nigerian people, actually, trying to explain them Flash and so on. Um, w- One thing, and we have to see this grow more at scale, and that's the mission we have at Flash essentially. But I think it's we will be able to increase the revenue that comes as well to Western companies, and of course, the developing world as much as possible. But because I have an example that I think is pretty interesting with that. So there's a company, they're a partner of ours, one of our clients. They're called Movies Plus. So it's mymoviesplus.com, and essentially they're a streaming platform that they have different films, documentaries, all this kind of stuff. And they were literally our first use case with subscriptions, because so we provide subscriptions, automatic recurring payments in Bitcoin, including in self custody, and they added on their website a pay in Bitcoin thing, and it redirects to our checkout, and you can connect your wallet and so on. And basically, um, up until they started accepting Bitcoin subscriptions, they could not serve customers outside of the Western world because, I mean, I have a credit card. So even being in Europe, they're a US business. I can just fill in, name, surname, email address. Then I connect my credit card, and they can charge me automatically through Stripe or whatever kind of payment provider they use in the back end. But if you don't have a credit card, or you cannot use your credit card abroad, because that's often the case, well, then you cannot use their service. Whereas now that they accept payments in Bitcoin, well, all you need is an email address, you connect your Bitcoin wallet, and boom, you have access to their streaming service, right? So potentially even more increasing their reach, because there's an entire, and we're talking billions of people that weren't capable of using their streaming service that are now potential customers, right? And so it's just bringing more people into these modern payment experiences, just, yeah, matching, the fiat payment experiences with the Bitcoin payment experiences, and just increase the client base for every single person, every single business in the world.
That's amazing. I want to get to that because I didn't have subscriptions on the list. You're gonna have to explain how that works to me. So one last question before we dive into Flash specifically. Besides this sort of debate on, it needs to be a medium of exchange, do you have any other concerns at the moment? Because there are a lot of like beyond medium of exchange store of value. Any other concerns that seem to potentially inhibit Bitcoin's adoption, its growth, its ability to serve as either store of value or medium of exchange?
To be honest, not really. I think like Bitcoin is just gonna happen anywhere, because Bitcoin doesn't care. First of all, right? The only thing is about regulation, but regulation, it changes so often, and you can see that, like, Europe decided to like tighten things up with regulation. That's something that, for example, in the case of Flash, doesn't concern us at all, because we're fully non-custodial, right? So
Is
yeah, a lot of our competitors are concerned. They need to move, and they need to, like, set up as banks, which is difficult. So when you're a startup, of course, so, it requires a lot of money, a lot of process, and so on. Um, and that's something that doesn't concern us. And on the other side of the ocean, you've got the US that seems to be, like they want to be much more open to the crypto space. We'll see what it looks like in the end in terms of regulation. I think, and I half hope that they will have a similar stance, although not as aggressive. But when it comes to the custody of funds, like I mean, I think if there are some financial processes behind institutions that hold custody of people's funds. I think it's for like very often the right reasons, like security. No one being able to just rug pull you and run away with your funds. But the U.S. is definitely much more open to crypto, and these regulations I think are also going to shift how the rest of the world thinks of their own regulation. Right? I think the EU, they want it to be like. Um, let's be first at regulate this like quite aggressively, because then everyone can just copy paste what we've been doing, and then we can like hope to kill the whole crypto industry. But that was a stupid idea, of course. And we see the US that like they're going to do their own thing when it comes to that. There's going to be much more friendly, which is likely, whatever amount of time it takes. It could be 6 months, it could be 10 years for all we know, is also going to change the stance that the EU ends up having when it comes to regulation. And I think like other than that, I don't see it, except if we start talking about like quantum computers, and I don't know enough about these topics anyway, right? But yeah, I don't really see anything that could be a big risk for Bitcoin.
Yeah, Poland's part of the European Union.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So does do you use the euro or do you have a local currency?
No, it's a local currency. It's called the Polish zloty, which means gold.
Okay. So what extent does Poland typically sort of fall in line with the ECB? And because like I know who was it? The Czech Republic, has kind of come out and they're looking at maybe accumulating some Bitcoin. They've been pretty favorable on, I think, at least long-term capital gains. Does is Poland? My sense is Eastern Europe tends to be uh, a bit less less communist, maybe. Does Poland sort of fall into that bucket? Do they kind of do their own thing to the extent that they can, or are they more aligned with like France, Germany?
Yeah. That's I mean, first of all, when it comes to the relationship with the European Central Bank, they're much more independent, of course, because they
Mm,
have their own central bank here, and they control their own currency. I mean, to be fair, it's not like they necessarily do it better than the European Central Bank, because inflation is always higher here. But and for example, yesterday the European Central Bank lowered their interest rates. The Polish Central Bank didn't do anything. They've got to react. My guess is they're likely to follow because, of course, we're in the same economic zone. But I guess we'll see about that. Now, when it comes to regulation, though, this is the EU and the European Commission that sets these rules, and you kind of don't have a choice. So the EU, they set up these rules and like the MiCA regulations. Every country has 18 months to actually start enforcing it. Poland has no choice. They also have to enforce it the same way. And that's, I mean, generally speaking, I believe one of the issues of the EU is that, you set a rule and everyone has to follow it, which sucks. Like a lot of Europeans say, yeah, it's nice. The EU, we're heading in a direction similar to like the US with like different states and the federal government. And I say, no, that's not what's happening. There's just like one head. They want to be able to tell you everything. Whereas in the US, there's much more independence, which I think is the better model. Yeah, but generally speaking, I do agree with like what you said, that the rest of the more western side of Europe feels more communist. Poland is a bit more about supporting businesses, and we'll see how this evolves, of course, because now the government is much more left wing. I don't know. I mean, but that's generally the feel. So I'm originally French and Spanish. I've just lived in Poland all of my life, pretty much all of my life, and and I believe like when it comes to all these things, it's a better place to live in
yeah.
than these
Yeah, I
countries.
I know from previous experience. I ran a company I sold a few years ago, and we outsourced our software develop. I'm not a developer. We outsourced our software development to a team in Poland, and it seems like there's a lot of talent and a lot of tech talent in
That's
Poland. So I can
yeah,
imagine some of if you guys can sort of help foster an ecosystem in Poland. I imagine we'll see a lot of really cool Bitcoin tech come out of
yeah,
your neck of the woods. So,
yeah.
okay, so hey, let's talk about Flash. Why don't you explain what Flash is and what inspired you to become a co-founder and what you're sort of working on?
Yeah. So, um, mhm, where to start? So, essentially, yeah, I'll start with what Flash is. So, Flash, and I mentioned it a bit earlier. Flash is software that allows users to connect their wallet to. So, it's a web application, And we like to think of it as the Stripe of Bitcoin, with the idea that you create an account, it's free, there's no KYC whatsoever, and you can connect your wallet to Flash, and then we can interact with your wallet to um, for the different use cases that we have. And so, if we think in terms of personas, we've got use cases that are like freelancers, content creators, where we've got tools like payment links, a widget to receive donations, or paywalls even that you can add on any website to force a payment, and then you can read an article or watch a video, whatever. Then we've got e-commerce. So of course some plugins that come there, and like integration with Wix, Shopify, like the main like platforms, we've got plugins for that, and also hosted solutions, right? So if you're a business that just wants to create a store, well, you can do so in Flash, create your products, add it to a store, and it gives you just a URL that you can you customize your store, and it can be your own store where you monetize in Bitcoin directly to your own wallet. And and then the last use case is going to be more like platforms. And so this is where the subscriptions use case comes in, where you can kind of just like in Stripe, you access your account, you create your subscription with your subscription plans, and essentially the way it works with us is you can redirect your users to a checkout page, and the user can just choose a plan, connect his wallet, and then whenever the payment needs to happen, we will just make this payment happen. So these payments are fully in the back end. You do not see a QR code ever in the case of subscriptions, like QR code in the sense of like typical payment experience that we have with the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So in this case, no, like the payment happens in the back end. You just receive a notification. If you're using the Flash wallet, for example, you get a notification on your phone saying payment made, like you've paid your subscription. Yeah, so I just hinted at it. We also have a wallet. So it's a self-custodial wallet. It's a mobile application, and you can connect it to Flash to also monetize on this wallet directly. But there's multiple wallets that are available out there that I think a lot of people already use.
Yeah, yeah. So is it Lightning and on chain or
So today we only have Lightning, but next month we want to add support for Lightning, on-chain, and Liquid, and even USDT. In fact, we'll see if we manage to do all of this next month. But yeah, that's what we've got on the roadmap.
okay. Explain how the subscriptions work, because my this is new to me. I was under the impression not really possible, or at least not easily possible without certain risks. How does that happen? So like hypothetically, Netflix could use Flash and automate the subscription payments using Bitcoin. Is that
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
okay? How does that work exactly?
yeah. So essentially, I'm trying to think, to what level. I don't want to get too technical, but essentially, trying to keep things simple. Um, if you were to connect to Netflix right now, staying on the same example, well, you would take your credit card, you would see the number, so you would input your number on the browser, then you got the extra like security and so on. Okay, and you hit confirm, and this sends this information to like a company like Stripe or something, and Stripe is going to trigger a payment from your bank account to their bank account, and then they'll forward it whenever the merchant can withdraw it. Well, in this case, Netflix. So in our case, it's similar. The thing is that there's a new tech, and we identified this tech very early. It was created by the guys from Albi Wallet, now Albi Hub. That is Lightning company. And essentially what they did is create something called Noster Wallet Connect. And it allows for wallets to communicate between each other, but also between applications, with applications, using Noster events. And it's quite a groundbreaking technology, because what it allows to do is it brings direct debit to Bitcoin. And it does so including in a self-custodial environment. And so in our case, you'd have the same exact interface, but instead of having fields where you input your credit card information, well, then all you need to do is click on a button to connect your wallet, and your wallet can generate a string, so like a long piece of text that essentially looks like a URL, and this is the information that we get. We encrypt it, of course, and with this information we can do, well, a bunch of stuff. We can like generate payment requests. We can check your wallet balance, the history of your transactions. We can make payments. And so in the case of subscriptions, Well, the way it works in our backend, because again, it's backend payments. No one sees a payment. The only thing you see is, the transactions happening in your wallet. And what we do is, we have this wallet connection information with the merchant's wallet. And so whenever we need, we can generate a Lightning invoice from his wallet, and we kind of store it in memory and in the backend. And with and then with the wallet connection that we have for the consumer, the user that is trying to sign up to Netflix, well then we are going to take his wallet connection and we're going to simply pass it the Lightning invoice and tell the wallet to make the payment. And so what we do at Flash, all we do is we send messages literally to the wallet. So we send a message to the merchant saying, hey, give me a Lightning invoice, and we receive this. And then we say to the consumer, well, we say, hey, pay this Lightning invoice, and it pays it. And when we have confirmation, well, then, we update the subscription. And for this, we send, like webhook events and stuff. So the application, they can handle their own backends and update their database and all of this. But yeah, it's quite simple. A wallet connection, and we just tell the wallet, do this or do that. And in this sense, we're exactly in the same position as MasterCard, where, if you have MasterCard or Visa or American Express, if you have a bank account, well, you got to do KYC, and you do KYC with your bank. But you don't do anything with MasterCard. Yeah. MasterCard is automatically connected to your bank account. It's like a service that they provide. And the reason for it is because it's not MasterCard that actually makes the payment. It's your bank account that makes the payment. They just accept that MasterCard is someone that can send a message saying, charge my account. And so we're in this exact same position where we just communicate with the wallet. And so it means that the user is always in control, because from his wallet, whatever wallet it is, he can just kill the connection that he has with Flash and this subscription. And we'll try again. We'll still have the wallet connection. We will try to make a payment, but if he disconnected it, well, it'll just fail. And that's it. And so he's always in control of his funds this way.
Okay, interesting, interesting. So it's not as simple as, plugging in like a static address for the seller where we're always going to receive to this. Like it's this brand new transaction. Is it technically complicated to for like the connection to show the end user and have the payment automated to that Lightning invoice? Was that like, or is that a pretty easy thing for that
Yeah,
for
like
people to
from a user experience perspective, all you do is you click on a button that says Connect Wallet, and then it opens up a modal. It's called Bitcoin Connect. It's open source. Different wallets have different ways of interacting with it. In the case of the Flash wallet, the way, and we're going to release it, I think, next week, because this is brand new for the Flash wallet. But essentially, the Flash wallet is a mobile wallet, and so when you'll click on the Connect wallet, you choose Flash, and it'll show a QR code. And so then you take your wallet, you scan the QR code, and this will create a connection and send this information through this point. But if you think of a wallet like Albiab or CoinOS, well, then with them, it's a login. So you click on their icon and it opens up a pop-up. You have to log into it, or maybe you're already logged in on your browser. Therefore, you just, confirm. So it's really just two clicks kind of user experience, and your wallet is connected, and it's connected until you choose to disconnect it. So very simple user experience, much easier than credit card, because you don't need to, check the number, type it all out, or store this information in your browser that could be potentially exploited or something like that. No, it's just two clicks and your wallet is connected.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And you're checking a lot of important boxes for us, no KYC and self custodial, all that good stuff. What does the onboarding process look like? I'll start there. What is the onboarding process like? If I had a small business and I said, okay, I want to start using Flash to accept Bitcoin,
Yeah.
like how do I get started if I know nothing about tech? Do you have like a team that engages and helps with the setup, or what's the how does
Yeah.
this work exactly?
So essentially, it can go either way. We want to talk with every single user that we onboard, but it's completely optional. If you don't want to talk with us, you don't have to. And so essentially, you go like most cases is someone finds our website, kind of reads what's happening there. So it's paywithflash.com, and there's like a get started button. And that's a basic sign up. So sign up, we just need email, password. You can also log in with Noster if you want, because we're integrated with that. But email and password is the standard, and you just need to verify your email by just clicking a link. The standard kind of email verification stuff, and then you arrive on the dashboard. Now, if you know nothing about Bitcoin, you likely don't have a wallet, so you won't have a compatible wallet. So what we suggest is to use the Flash wallet. And for this, through the onboarding, literally from your phone, you just scan a QR code that appears. It opens up your app store. You download the wallet, and you again scan a QR code from your wallet, and it automatically connects you with the same user account that you used when you signed up, right? So your wallet and your web application are in sync automatically. And from that moment, you don't need to worry about a wallet because you've already got one, and you can head over to the full dashboard and start creating anything. Like from the moment you decide to try out Flash to getting a wallet to create your first payment link, or that you can send with an invoice to a customer, it can literally take 3 minutes, and you will earn in full self custody to your own wallet.
That is, so there's the use case. I mean, there's like a selling point for, because you think about the headache of you have to go through as a business of getting a bank account and accept, like I've been there, setting up Stripe and connecting it to your Shopify or whatever. It's you don't realize how challenging it is until you have an alternative like this. It sounds like that.
I mean, like Stripe, I think on average, to actually reach your dashboard, I think it's about 15 minutes of onboarding, including KYC and all of this. And yeah, with us, it's again just 2 minutes. I mean, we just need an email and password. Like that's it. So
Yeah,
very very simple. And then all of our tools are automatically compatible with whatever wallet you use, right? Because we have a wallet, but it's just an enabler. It just makes this onboarding easier. But if you're already, a Bitcoiner that has, for example, an Albi Hub wallet, well, then I mean, you don't like, yeah, literally, it's just email, password. You log in and you connect your wallet in, and that's it. And from that moment, you can set up your business to receive peer-to-peer payments directly. Yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah. And
Yeah, I
so,
don't
I,
I don't know how this isn't the future, I mean,
uh,
it's just
like,
it's better, it's easier, it's everything.
yeah, 100%. Now, there is one thing that I do need to add is, of course, getting started, getting set up. It's free and like no KYC, but we do take a fee, and this fee is also very interesting how we do it. It's kind of if you use Stripe, well then that's if you're charging $10 for a product, well then the customer is going to pay $10. This payment goes to Stripe; it doesn't go to you, but then you can withdraw this money minus their fee, right? And so they hold custody of these funds. This is why actually you have to KYC, and they need all their AML processes and stuff because they're the ones then sending this money. So we don't do that because, of course, the money goes directly to the merchant. But and this is where this direct debit feature also comes in very comes becomes very useful, especially in the Lightning Network environment where we can automate microtransactions in self custody, right? And so it's instant payments that are automated, including microtransactions in self custody. And so when the merchant gets paid, we know when he gets paid because it was through our business tools. Therefore, we trigger a fee payment from his wallet directly. And so when the merchant gets paid, he can start with a wallet that has zero balance on it because he will receive a payment. And the moment he receives the payment, we trigger a 1.5% fee that pays us automatically, right? So similar to how we do with the subscriptions, it's the same logic, only it's to capture our fee. So if you receive, I don't know, 1,500 satoshis, we will then you'll see in your wallet the first transaction that you received X amount, and then you'll see a second transaction that happens instantly at the same moment after you receive your funds. That'll be the 10 satoshis of fees that you're sending over to Flash.
Same moment, but separate transactions.
That's
So
right.
that way you've got these disparate, one goes to the vendor, one goes to you,
Yeah.
and okay. Yeah, yeah, that
and
makes
and we can remain non-custodial, never touched anyone's money. The merchant gets paid first.
very cool. What, what's your approach to marketing and selling this? Are you guys just like kind of going door to door to businesses? You have a sales team who's, reaching out, cold calling? Like how are you finding people to onboard here?
Yeah, so a lot of it is network, knowing people in the space. But there's different stages of it. Like, to be completely honest, there's the low hanging fruits are people that are monetizing already in Bitcoin, and we can get them to convert over to Flash for basic reasons. It's easier. It's less, yeah, less hassle. I mean, BTSpace server is pretty hard to set up, and it's pretty hard to keep running as well. So that's where, like, we help. Also, we've actually got customer support, right? Like, we can help everyone through it. So that's one thing that, like, gets businesses to come over to Flash. And also just the wider range of use cases that we have compared to our competitors, right? If you use our subscriptions, well then, you're a business that is in the Bitcoin space. You're not going to use a different tool for invoicing or for the other stuff that you're running in your business. And so these are the ones that we try to reach out to them through, of course, social network like Twitter. And then we also, like, have tools that leverage the network of merchants that are on BTC Map, for example, and so on. Then so this is for, like, if you think of the adoption curve, right, of technology. So these are the early ones, like early adopters. These are Bitcoiners they understand it. They're already monetizing. We don't need to convince them about anything other than our product is superior. But then there's, like, the almost the early majority, the ones that are in between early adopters and early majority. So for these people, well, it's a bit different. This is much more about LinkedIn, reaching out to people on LinkedIn directly, communicating on LinkedIn. So try to, like, have as many connections as possible, and try to get some conversation going with them as to what their opinions are about accepting Bitcoin payments. And then it's producing content that will little by little educate them, hopefully bring them over to us. And then the next part is yeah, ads, communicating directly, try and, like, find a greater reach, because through ads on social network, well, you can have a big reach of people. So we're trying to put a blend of these. But at this stage, to be honest, we're only just starting our ads effort, and so everything has just been organic. And yeah, we have a bunch of users daily that come in, try it out, and these all come from organic searches, socials, etc.
So, what are the types of companies? So, I understand that these are tend to be early adopters who are using your service. Makes a lot of sense. Are they companies, selling apparel and it just happens to be a Bitcoiner, or they're just selling, coffee and they happen to be a Bitcoiner, or do they tend to be like Bitcoin companies who have started using Flash?
So it's more the first case that you mentioned. We really want to be able to get Bitcoin companies over, and I think this is where the subscriptions product is really the one that, like, we have to push with them. The moment that we push the release that I mentioned, like next week or in the next 10 days, of the Flash wallet that will be just better integrated with our subscriptions tool, well then, we'll just be ready to push this much further, because there will be actually a self custodial free option to get started with subscriptions that will be much more consumer focused, so it'll be easier to sell then. And I think this is what will bring Bitcoin companies over, because I mean, there's so many Bitcoin companies whose only target customer are Bitcoiners, yet they charge them only in dollars, because there's no solution for subscriptions in Bitcoin, right? And that's kind of stupid, right? So we want to be able to, like, provide a solution for them. But there's also a bunch of other people that are literally just curious. And these are smaller businesses, but also much bigger businesses that I talk to, including, like, corporations. So when it comes to corporations that I talk with, they're trying to figure out a strategy. They're trying to see, okay, we see that we should think about accepting Bitcoin payments. I mean, crypto payments. That's how they think about it, of course. But so they're scouting. They want to see what's the best solution, what makes sense or not. And with these type of profiles, we really try and highlight the fact that self-custody is the way, peer-to-peer is the way. Um, Otherwise, if you're going for a payment solution with a BitPay, Coinbase, and so on, well then, what are you actually doing? You're not part of the future of money. They're just reproducing the existing model of custody, but in with new currencies. So they're not really solving anything, and that's not setting yourself up for the future. Whereas what we're doing is really part of this, new money economy and way of using and holding your funds. So that's the conversation that I have there. But then with under corporations, but still medium enterprise, I guess. Well, then with them, it's much more education. Though they're just curious. They really come from the perspective of I see Bitcoin headlines like nonstop in the news. I saw it 10 years ago. I still see it today. Maybe we should like consider it. And when I have conversations with people like that, I'm not really selling Flash. Actually, I'm just talking about Bitcoin. And I mean, I've got great supporting documentation because I did make a Bitcoin documentary that is one of the most watched on Bitcoin. So on YouTube. So I always redirect them to the documentary as well, just to get this extra information there. But yeah, a lot of it comes through education, really making people understand why Bitcoin is here and is going to stay. But then we have to make them understand why they should focus on the self custodial or stuff like multi-institution custody that are these blended custody solutions and peer-to-peer payments mostly because this is the future.
Okay, so I would love for you to debunk a fear that I've had for companies like yours. And so I hope you don't take this the wrong way.
Mhm.
I've had this concern with people who, like, I think the sort of stuff you're building is really important to sort of fulfilling the vision that I and Jeff Booth apparently seem to have for Bitcoin as, the means of exchange globally. Uh, Sometime from now, it's not obviously the dominant source of transactions. My concern has been that it that people in your shoes could potentially be too early to where the world is headed, that your transaction volume can't sustain the business in the short term. Obviously, I think directionally you're in the right spot. Um, but I don't know where we are on the adoption curve as store of value, and where medium of exchange. Certainly, it feels really early. The fact that there's effectively no one in a 20-mile radius of me that I can exchange goods and services for Bitcoin with, except now my raw milk farmer is accepting Bitcoin. Do you share that concern? Do you ever wonder if you're too early and if the success of your business kind of hinges on just a medium exchange adoption increasing rapidly? Or do you think maybe we're past that and it's just a matter of smooth operations, innovation? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Because I think about it a lot, of course. As the CEO of a payments company in the space, obviously. But like, I mean, I think we're definitely early, but early is good, right? So in our business, we take 1.5% of each transaction. In our case, it's a volumes game. It's about showing that we're using the right technology, and we have the right product in order to get businesses over and help them earn more, right? And so our goal is to get our customers to earn more money, right? And so we want to help them in that, right? And so we have a bunch of stuff that we want to help our customers with. If they're fully activated customers, we want to be able to add them on BTC Map, write articles about them, explain their use case and essentially promote them because then, yeah, they can earn money. And if they earn money, of course, so do we, right? But we kind of also normalize the use cases. Now, what's good with being early is that you build your tech stack, like your innovation stack. That's one of the co-founders of Square that calls it like that, the innovation stack, where it's one thing to have the technological solution for like the wallet, um, than the web application that is kind of the Stripe for Bitcoin that we have. But then there's our entire backend processes. There's the branding. There's all these elements that make a company that take a lot of time to do. Right? It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and it's done over a long period of time. Getting all of these points right is difficult. For in our case, at this stage, of course, we can continue to work if we get investments because again, very low margin environment, so it's about big scale, and so we need to like grow. So we need to work with VCs and so on. And um, essentially by building all of these innovation stacks well, then we're building ourselves for the long term. And this is what we need to be able to focus ourselves on. Because when it comes to being early or not, um, we are late enough in the adoption curve that the market of payments in crypto, right? Because this is like, this is how people think about it. Yeah. So we're serving the crypto space. Um, the, of course, focusing on Bitcoin, right? But the, the, the market that already exists is big enough for us to have the right amount of transaction volume and revenue that shows the progression. That means the moment we reach this, critical moment of mass adoption, that we'll be able to just capture the entire market, right? So being early is good because it increases appetite for investment. As long as we show that we're building our our innovation stack the way it should be built. And so what we're doing is we're proving that we are doing that and that we're bringing customers over little by little in this growing kind of sense with increasing revenue. And with all of this in mind, early is great because the moment critical mass starts coming, it's then this is the moment where like our business grows uh, extensively. So I'm not really worried. We just need to make sure we do a really good job and we do it better than our competitors. That's it. If we manage to do that, we can little by little continue increasing market share that we have of a growing market anyway, and continue building our innovation stack, and then be ready for the moment of mass adoption.
So I imagine that your investors are Bitcoiners, low time preference. Like they're in this for 8 to 10 to 15 years. They're not thinking about how do I make a quick buck, in a year. Is
Yeah.
that
So
fair to say?
um, yes, yes,
Maybe.
100%. But no, 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 definitely. The thing is, we're one company from their portfolio, and our goal is to be the main company from their portfolio, right? And I believe we have like full chances of doing that because with the products that we have, I think that we can beat our competitors and beat them for the long run, basically. And so it's kind of we got to choose. If you invest in a payment uh, company in the Bitcoin space, well, you got to choose the right one, and we just want to be this right one for our investors. But the typical um, um, progression for startup companies is anyway multiple years. But except for now the use case of AI is of course next level in terms of a company is set up and 3 months later they have $10 million of annual revenue. That's just crazy. And in fact, like how it can remove appetite of investors from companies like ours is just mind blowing. But of course, we're working with Bitcoin focused investors that themselves are builders in the Bitcoin space and support other companies and share this vision for this growing ecosystem. But low time preference is definitely part of it. But we're going to be able to show progress because this is the only way we'll get them to increase their investment and make sure that they stay with us along the way. They're great partners, and we want them to remain partners because it's a relationship when you have investors, and we want to make sure they're confident with their investment and that we're taking the company in the right direction.
So if you had to guess, what how long from now do you think you're the biggest company in their portfolio, the best ROI? Are we looking at you know 3 years? Like and I guess some of this could be contingent upon what happens in the legacy system. I mean, do we just hit a wall and things break and Bitcoin becomes a very clear and evident alternative to that, or can governments continue to kick the can further and avoid a monetary reset? But if you were to just sort of speculate, you know all else equal, are we looking at 5 years? Are we looking at 10 years? Are we looking at 20 years? Like, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, I'm thinking in the range of 5 to 10 years, essentially, and it's really based on the typical growth that startups like ours have, and the growth of the market that we're in, right? And so with these two factors, I think we're talking 5 to 10 years until we can be the biggest company in their portfolio.
I hope you're right, man, because I think that's gonna be the signal I think many people need to, it's like if I can go down the street and buy groceries, and I know that you guys are on the back end of that payment, and Bitcoin's the medium of exchange for those sorts of things. I feel like that's when, I mean, I'll not that I'm not worried about Bitcoin, but those are like some of the fears I have of like, I do agree with Jeff Booth that we need to get to that point. And I love what you guys are building. Um, I guess I'm curious. Do you think there's going to be? Do you think that's going to just be a gradual adoption into daily payments in Bitcoin, or do you think is part of your thesis on that? 5 to 10 years right now, when everyone's using Venmo and credit cards and all these things, it's a pretty aggressive timeline. If you're from the outside looking in, I can see a world where that is reality. Do you is part of what you're factoring in maybe something like a monetary reset, or governments out of necessity adopting Bitcoin, or do you just think just with organic natural adoption that's how long it's going to take?
Yeah, so I think organic natural adoption. It's I made a documentary called "The Great Reset and the Rest of Bitcoin." So I do think that economic reset is definitely something um, that is possible. But I don't build my business based on that. You see what I mean? Because yeah, it's like we need to build it more on like some hard data of what we see, what we're seeing in the market, and how things are evolving. But no, I think it's going to be about use cases. I mean, 100%. It's about use cases. It's about showing that it is extremely easy to get started. I mean, think about it. Going back to what you were saying, that you set up your Stripe account earlier, and the fact that yeah, it's kind of a bit messy, and it's a tough process. Well, what if we could simplify that to the point where if someone has any kind of idea for a business, well, then the first step that he's going to take is actually try to add Bitcoin payments to it, because it's actually so much easier, and he can just test his idea and the flow of payments with it. And only then does he go on to the next step of like, well, okay, maybe it's worth my effort to now go KYC. If you're a business, you got a KYB. So you need to have a business first, right? And so you can't really test the flow of payments before you've already taken a bunch of steps. Whereas we're completely simplifying that, right? And so that's just in terms of getting started with things. But then I think it's just the use cases that we can build through this concept. There's two concepts I think that are very interesting that we really want to unlock at Flash. Number one is the fact that we can automate microtransactions, right, in self-custody. And so this means that any platform can, and it wasn't possible up until now. It wasn't possible for a social network to add Bitcoin payments up until recently. And the reason for it is not, it was technically possible, of course. The thing though is, how do you do it in a way that makes sense to you economically? So you get paid as a social network platform. And how do you do that without needing to register as literally a financial institution, meaning holding user funds, right? Well, very, very difficult. Now there's a solution. Master Wallet Connect allows to capture fees the same way we do it for ourselves. We can do that at scale for other businesses, right? Huge use case right there, right? And then the second one, I forgot where I wanted to go. Oh yeah, the second one, also linked with Master Wallet Connect, is the fact that um, so I mentioned how in the case of our subscriptions, and even it's the same with our fees, but the payment, there's no QR code, right? The payment is a back-end payment. It's automated. It just happens in the background, right? Well, um, the way it works with Flash is our wallet is compatible with Liquid. It's compatible with Lightning. We know when a wallet is connected. We don't know whose wallet it is. We don't care. We don't even need to know what wallet it is. Like whether it's a wallet of Satoshi or whatever. Right? We don't care about that either. What matters to us is that we know what networks are available as part of this wallet. And so, in the case of our subscriptions, if the merchant wallet has Lightning and Liquid, and the merchant and the consumer wallet has only Liquid, we can choose to make this transaction in Liquid instead of making it in Lightning, right? And so this interoperability of payment networks in this automated and self-custodial environment will make it so simple that next time, let's say I see you in person and I want to send you some Bitcoin, we will need to have the conversation of like, should it be Lightning, on-chain, Liquid? What wallet do you have? Do you have a Lightning address? This stuff won't matter anymore, because I'll just be able to say, send me 100 sats, whatever amount, 1 Bitcoin, we don't care. We will be able to choose the best network in the back end for you, right? And so, including for these peer-to-peer payments, we can select networks and simplify payment experiences. That's something that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, and we can do it. The tech is out there, it's all open source, and we're going to freaking build it. So it's like it's these use cases that are going to bring, I think, mass adoption down the road.
Man, that's awesome. I'm excited. Well, hey, we're past an hour now. I'll round out with two questions. So one is, are you shorting Stripe and PayPal at the moment? Is that part of your financial plan?
I'm Bitcoin only, and only, yeah, long.
That's the way to do it. And then last question for you. Told you, hopefully you thought of something. I told you I'd ask it. What is an unpopular opinion that you have? And you get bonus points if you offend some Bitcoiners with this opinion.
Yeah. So I think Bitcoiners um, build. So I mean, and Bitcoin companies in general, they build for Bitcoiners and not necessarily the real world and what people actually look for. Right. That's why adoption is so slow. There's a lot of like Bitcoiners in the space. They build some tech. They open source it, and they move on to something else, right? And I think it's good because it creates opportunity for people like me, obviously, because we can see this tech. I'm not as smart as them to be able to like build the same thing, but I know how to use it, right? And so that's one of the points. But also, like, adoption is slow because of that, and because of the fact that we're thinking only in such niche terms. Somehow the crypto world has done a much better work at adoption than the Bitcoin world. Like, why is that? It's all a matter of user experience, of thinking about use cases and developer experience. And I think that's where the Bitcoin community lacks. And, it's a matter of time. This will change. But yeah, I think that's maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion. Bitcoiners build like more for the long term, but they build worse than like, standard web development.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think about this a lot, not from a tech perspective, but and like how I go about orange pilling someone. I'm so deep in I'm so deep into the Bitcoin rabbit hole that it's easy for me to like lose perspective on what do they know, what are their needs, and I think like I've been sort of shilling Larry Lepard's book, The Big Print, lately because I read it as soon as I got it, and it sort of reminded me of like what is this big problem we're trying to solve. And I feel like it's a book that I could share with someone who has no concept of the problem that Bitcoin is solving, and they can look at that and say this system is demonstrably broken. Like it's so evidently broken, but I didn't have all these sort of pieces of information. I just knew about Occupy Wall Street. I heard about it in the news and I knew the bailouts, but like I didn't realize that that was me paying for socialized losses of big banks, and the only reason that's possible is because of central banking and this banking cartel. And I think I suspect you're onto something important there, that Bitcoiners tend to we get in our echo chamber and we sort of build amongst ourselves. And the easier we can make it for people to onboard into Bitcoin without having to know everything about Bitcoin or having to be technical or be fully bought in and engaged with the Bitcoin community, so to speak, I think the better. So yeah, I like that, man. I'm sure you'll offend some builders with that opinion, but hey, so be it.
So be it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Pierre, hey, this hour flew, man. This is a lot of fun. I don't spend enough time thinking about medium of exchange because what we do at the Bitcoin Way is a lot of so much of our work is just helping people take proper
Mm.
100% self custody, no counterparty risk, no KYC, none of the nonsense. So it's good to revisit these topics. You know a lot about it, and I love that you're on the front lines of it all. Why don't you give a handoff? Tell people where they can find you, learn more about Flash, anything you want to share.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Twitter. So just look for Pierre Corbin, and I should be one of the first results. From there, you can of course follow all of my insights on the market, but also you can find Flash. You can go straight to the website paywithflash.com. And just don't hesitate to reach out. You can also write me an email, pierre.corbin@paywithflash.com. Happy to help you out, answer any kind of questions. Now, there is one thing I do want to plug. That's, I don't know how much of your audience like travels and is also in Europe, but I co-founded the Bitcoin Film Fest, which is a film festival, and it happens every year in Poland, in Warsaw. So it's, for more people that are in Europe or want to travel, cross the ocean and come over. So that's end of May, 23rd to 25th of May, just celebrating culture and Bitcoin films. Yeah, so if ever you can, come around.
Awesome, man. Pierre, thank you so much for joining the pod. I really appreciate it. Love the conversation. And I can't wait to see what you guys do over the next months and years.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was
Yeah.
a very good conversation.
Cheers. And that's a wrap. Again, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Pierre. Love what they are doing at Flash. Go check out Flash if you own a business, you're looking to accept Bitcoin as payment, and go follow Pierre on X. Check out his film festival as well in Warsaw if you are in the area or want to make the trip. And of course, if you need help with Bitcoin in proper self-custody, go to thebitcoinway.com/podcast to learn more about how we can help. We will train you on the steps to do it right the first time. We also help with online privacy. We'll help you set up a privacy phone. We have a Plan B residency option, everything you need for your self-sovereignty needs. Again, that's thebitcoinway.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, do me a favor, feed the algorithm a bit. Leave us a comment, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who you think might be interested in it. Would really, really appreciate that. And as always, until next time, stay safe, stay sovereign, and remember, the yield on Bitcoin is freedom.